Welcome back to the Eric Crown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this little bit of a later start on a Thursday morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. Plenty to talk about today in the short-term timeframes as we do get the pullback that we were looking for over the past 48 hours after that big move up to 45,000 bucks. So with that in mind, I want to talk now today about how that's, or what essentially to expect next. Not that you can necessarily have expectations, but the major areas to be aware of in this particular pullback that would actually change the current dynamics, and until then, all of the higher term time frame analysis does still remain valid. Anyways, with that in mind, I, as always, want to be wishing the best and the happiest if I haven't already. And I want to also let you know that the premium features on the Crown Trading application are now live. As always, you can learn more about them in the Learn More tab, in fact. So there you go right there. And the biggest question that I get about it is, well, do you get access to the Jewel Light? Yes, indeed you do. Okay, cool. So we're going to swing back to this data here a little bit later within this video, as I want to reference it within the context of our current price action. But for right now, do understand that there is big focus on the global open interest and of course the funding rates as well. Anyways, let's go into the price action right here and let's waste no time. So realistically, over the past couple days here, after that big move up to $45,000, we've been looking for a pullback to, very likely the low $42,000 region, of which the reason for that is that one, we do have a nice CME gap right here coming in from the 28th of February to the first day of March, obviously. And then if I do plot a bullish retracement in this case, we do see that the 382 fib comes in right around that level as well, just above 42,000 bucks in this area, which is where you do expect higher lows to come in on your strong trending moves. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't retrace further, but I would start to exercise extreme caution on this current price action and actually invalidate the higher term timeframes, which do still show continuation long term, with any sort of a closure on a medium-term time frame below the 618 in this case. That would greatly increase the probabilities that this is one massive bull trap right here with, targets back down to basically the lows of what we saw on end of January and end of February. So with that in mind, until those criterias are invalidated, I do look at this as very likely to pull back into a higher low with specific interest on the 42,000, just above 42,000 bucks region right there. And then also just above 41,000 bucks right here. And then big caution below $40,000. I would expect that if Bitcoin is going to continue on the upside trajectory, we very likely don't retrace further below about $41,000 on a closing basis. On top of that, if we go back on over here and check out our stochastic momentum oscillators, we do see on the lower term timeframes, and we'll get back into the higher term timeframes soon enough, we're starting to see nosedive, as we did say, but this is coming within the context of declining volatility. So we also saw this same thing on BBWP over here as well, and we expect declining volatility on, of course, a corrective move. So I still look at this as, fine for right now, but still, within the context of a short-term correction, which does mean short-term downside. And we do see, if we plot out this nice trend line right here, we do have a nice regression coming in from the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, working on number 6 lows right here, which is being plotted for the past 2.5 weeks now into the middle of February. So that would imply that we very likely do see it come down a little bit further. And of course, 4-hour stochastic momentum will be remaining with downside pressure as long as we are closing below $45,000. So that is still the validation condition for major upside continuation. I would not be looking for upside continuation specifically until Bitcoin closes a full hour above $45,000 or a daily above, I think it was like 44,500. And then, we start to talk about the next targets, which we'll get into a little bit later. But for right now, I do think this is a little bit more pertinent in this case. And so when does it likely hit this trend line? Well, very unlikely on the next tick, but perhaps the next tick after that, or certainly the end of the daily, we very likely will see it somewhere down around here, assuming that the upside condition is not met. So we should also go check out the 6-hour, as I do believe that one was coming down last we looked. Yeah, and same thing over here. Just by the by, the 4-hour and the 6-hour for stochastic momentum have been really good, especially when you mediate it with a volatility indicator like you see right here. So that's represented by this guy, which is an HVP. I also like using BBWP as well, obviously, but they should naturally line up with each other. I prefer BBWP just personally, but in this case, you can see that we are, once again, initiating a bit of a corrective signal right here, and we'll be remaining with downside momentum on the 6-hour as long as Bitcoin is below 44,730. I should also let you know, I do such a bad job of it, and I do apologize. For the people in the TA program, I uploaded a video on Monday into the, I think it was the strategies section, perhaps. Yeah, I think it was that section. going over corrective and continuation sort of signals with, well, momentum oscillators and volatility. So if you're unsure of these concepts, definitely go reference that, and hopefully that will tie up any loose ends. But basically, you're seeing it kind of right here in front of your very face. Anyways, I imagine all the other lower term timeframes are probably coming down rather hard, as we do see the 3 hour, yep, all the way down here, will be remaining with downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 44.3. Again, corrective here by hourly is showing what? Is showing a loading screen, is showing downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's closing below 43,700, and hourly is probably flippy floppy here as well. Actually gonna be crossing to the upside. If Bitcoin can close above about 43,300 in the next 11 minutes. So by the time I post this video, very likely gonna have clarity on that situation. But realistically, I mean, these are all short-term time frame plays, right? And if you do want to go off of the hourly structure right here, it's actually pretty damn simple. Any sort of an hourly closure below, in this case, this region right here, which is about 42,900. And yes, I would be looking at that next targeted region down to the 382. Somewhere just above 42,100 as very likely viable, and then we'd be expecting a bit of a bounce and preferably a higher lows, formed in the next overnight section. So by the time that we get into our live stream tomorrow and Friday, hopefully we would have that clarified. If not, then well, then we probably got some new going on. Again, below there, if that level does fail, I am looking towards just above $41,000. But below there, I do start to get quite skeptical of this price action. You really don't want to see this one retrace too deep. And below the 618, I would say that this is extremely likely a bull trap, and we're going to see price action come down very, very hard. I'm not leaning towards that direction, but that would be the criteria for me to sort of validate that. Until then, short term, a bit more sideways and down is completely fine as we work off of extreme conditions on momentum oscillators and volatility, and then hopefully a higher low in the overnight session. So with that in mind, let me just see how deep in this video we are. Okay, nice and simple. I'm going to go back to this chart over here, and let's talk about so we've already talked about potential downside displeasures and where things really start to change. But now let's talk about the upside in this case. And by the way, this is an inverted fib retracement right there, not relevant towards what we're talking about in case you're wondering. But the upside continuation conditions are still the same. Or sorry, actually, before we get into that, I do want to highlight this over here. To further validate the importance of the $40,000 level, I want to bring you over to the daily and the 5-day, both of which, as you can see, are going to see momentum turn to the downside on our daily stochastic below about 39,500, which is close enough to 40,000. And I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, you can't be sure necessarily, but I would imagine that coming into this next closure for tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time, that number will extremely likely rise on up, probably somewhere around just above $40,000. So do keep an eye on that number, because not only would it be a full-on technical breakdown, but it'd also be momentum down as well. And the 5-day is actually going to have the same level as well, 39,750 in this case, close enough. And this one obviously still has another 3 days left to go until closure, but you can imagine if the daily spills on over, that's going to probably have carry on effects. But for right now, all is all is still pointing towards upside continuation. So let's get into it right here. All right, so what would validate an upside continuation condition with targets in mind towards, pretty much the $50,000 levels, probably even mid 50,000 over time. Again, it's the same thing as what we've been looking at for like over a month now, really, which is the $45,000 level on a full hour closure, nothing less. On a daily, could use probably 44,500, both of which are going to be, equally as important, I do suspect. The 4 hour, obviously, being that it is a lower term time frame, has a higher degree of, being a bit of a fake out move. But I suspect that in this particular scenario right here, probably okay. But that is something to decide for yourself. Anyways, if that does happen, yes, I am looking for moves generally up into the mid to low $50,000 in the following weeks. The reason why this is also important is because of the higher term timeframes and the sort of bleed over effects that we can see right there. So if we go over here to the weekly, several things are going on right now. Bitcoin is getting its first higher low on a weekly schedule compared to the late January lows right here, which is looking pretty damn good. Just make sure that I'm recording. Okay, that's good. Good thing to be having when you're almost 10 minutes into a video. And this will be confirmed as a higher low if 1, the prior validation conditions are met, or 2, if you are using a weekly, which, by the way, remember that CME is closing its weekly tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, I do believe, above about, it's still like 44,500 bucks as well, then that would confirm several things. It would confirm, most importantly, hidden bullish divergence of the 2 drives variety, if I can bring it up over here, on our weekly, which would be, rather powerful. Same thing on, of course, CME as well, and that one closing, not faster, but sooner than spot price action, would hold its weight. And that will have a technical target. That will have a technical target all the way up to, basically the last major gap that we saw back on over here, which is in the low $50,000 territory in the following weeks, I do suspect. Not only that, but we do see that volatility is contracted to a relatively low level. We've really only seen it a few times lower than this in the history of CME specifically. Obviously, spot price action a bit different there, but you would expect contractions into higher lows within the context of the current trend. So that would imply, this is like a major low, for example. On top of that, to combine volatility with the indicator that that is really meant to be, combined with, is the jewel over here, which already does have upside curvature since early February. The DMI is not supporting it yet, so that is a bit of a pushback on what I'm saying. But ultimately, we do expect that these signals, alongside expanding volatility, so right now it's not, but if it does, would be rather powerful and could have even greater effects longer term. For example, or can I bring up an example? The last time that we saw a big upside signal, for example, obviously we can apply this to the downside as well right here. The last couple of 50% downside moves, by the way, but to the upside would come back from July 2020 right here, where we saw very low volatility. It starts to expand. The weekly jewel gets a signal about basically at around the same time. That was your first move up right here, about a 30% move from 9,000 to almost 13. And then it resets again into another higher low and gets another fresh signal after that. This time, this was like the big one where Bitcoin went from about 11 to, 20,000 plus, basically, as we got fully expanded weekly BBWP, which is kind of fucking crazy. Doesn't happen too often. Anyways, I figured that we're kind of doing some over here. We've been seeing volatility generally on a contraction phase since those highs of last year in March, actually. So this last basically year, at least in my opinion, based off of this, which I actually do think is correct, has been one major massive consolidation, which is what we've been saying here for a long time. The Moon Boys and the Doom Boys are equally as ridiculous when you look at it from this venue. Bitcoin's just been in one massive macro range between 60 and 30,000 bucks, and targets, people calling for targets, over to like $200,000 or $10,000 are equally as misguided. At least from a more mathematical standpoint, we can see very quickly here and very obviously here that this is just one massive consolidation. And if this does get confirmed, this hidden bullish divergence drive on the weekly for CME tomorrow, that would be the next sort of big signal that I need to see. And it just needs to close basically here or higher. Obviously above 44,500 would look, significantly better, but ultimately that'd probably be good enough on its own. To top that off, we do see, of course, that weekly momentum is still remaining to the upside on the on the weekly stochastic. CME, I think, was, it's the same thing as well. It's not really even anything unique about this, as is the 5-day. And the 5-day also did hit a pretty critical region here. This horizontal green bar at the 8.5 level has only been hit about 4 times in Bitcoin's history, not counting the current one that we have right here. 3 of those 4 times were, macro cycle lows. Now, do note that these macro cycle lows, did retest around the lows again, which we actually saw over here, between the last couple months. And from there to actually get the real move to the upside took, months, in most cases like a year. So do be aware of that. The one time where it failed was right here, of course, in October 2014. We did see a pretty nice move up. However, on a wick basis, 70% or a little bit more than that. On a closing basis, about, just over 20%. Ultimately, though, it did fail. So that is why, as always, it needs to be an invalidation condition. But for right now, this does still kind of play into the more long-term of this asset. I think I'll just maybe end on this note as well. I don't want to make this too lengthy or more lengthy than it really needs to be. But let me bring up my fundamental chart. Here we go. And I want to talk about this one more time, which is the accumulation distribution indicator, which the slope change of this one has accurately gotten the macro shifts in direction on Bitcoin basically since the dawn of time, especially when those slope changes kind of come at extremes here, both the upside and the downside in these green zones and the red zones. What's very interesting about this is coming into the month of March, we got our first positive slope basically since, last year. And that I do suspect holds a lot of weight. There is one major pushback on the statement, however. This slope change that we're seeing right here is not happening within the red zone, which all of the prior macro lows have happened within the red zone, to be fair. So, what do I make out of that? I don't know. I don't fucking know. There is one example where we did see it kind of change within this current vicinity. This was back in September 2016 right here. I didn't mark it off on the chart because it's actually like a pretty uneventful area. In fact, basically it was just a consolidation coming in from the retest of the prior highs. In this case, you kind of, if you want to make an analogy to our current price action, well, Bitcoin retested its prior all-time highs in November compared to the March highs of last year. Well, kind of same thing over here as well. June 2016 basically retest around the prior highs of the 2014 run. Takes a couple months to consolidate above the 9 and then gets a positive slope yet again. So it was pretty harmless. It looks like in the history of time. If we actually measure this one out, it was a 40% downside move, which is actually rather comparable to what we've seen thus far here. A little bit more in this current one. Actually, a little bit under 50% right there. If you take it on a closing basis, probably around 40% actually. Actually, in fact, extremely close to 40%, 38.35. So, I do want to offer up at least, some contingencies on this. Obviously it's not going to be perfect, but I did think that was rather interesting. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I want to leave it at for right now. Basically kind of a long way of saying higher term time frame still looking good here. I do still suspect that Bitcoin probably does push on through. There's just more things pointing to the upside than the downside. And after a 50% move to the downside, what's more likely? Probably a bit of a bounce, which we've certainly gotten thus far. I mean, we've had a $10,000 bounce. But let's go look at the underlying market dynamics. And this is the big one for me here. So first and foremost, we are now starting to see positive funding rates consistently on both the daily and the hourly, both actually at 0.004%. Very small, so not super concerning. If that was like about 100 times that level, that would be extremely concerning. If it was about 50 times that level, it would be very concerning as well. Even 10 times its current level wouldn't be. It would be concerning, but not that concerning. So I just want to kind of give some color on that aspect because it's more nuanced than just positive, bad, negative, good. No, obviously fucking not. If you do read it like that, you're probably going to get wrecked pretty significantly. Anyways, we do expect positive rates when Bitcoin is in an uptrend, especially on a daily time frame, which is good. It's not necessarily good. That's just what you expect. Anyways, what I want to combine this with is the global open interest over here. Again, over the past year and a half that we've been documenting this data, we've noticed that anytime that we've seen open interest get basically close to 14 billion, and especially higher than that, has provided more severe responses. But above 14 billion, it's typically been like, a bit of a crowded trade essentially, and does offer the potential for a nasty cascade of a downside move. For example, like you saw back on over here in September of last year, before Bitcoin went from about $53,000 to $40,000 almost in a day. And spent some time down around there as the market did wash out all of these over leveraged positions. Well, for right now, it is not a concern. At least I don't think it's a concern. It's at about 11.32 billion, that is. But it is something that I keep a keen eye on as Bitcoin trudges along here. As that number does go up, assuming that Bitcoin does go up alongside with it towards 14 billion, I would start to exercise more and more caution on the higher term timeframes, just as kind of like a preliminary statement right there. So, it's not too, like I said, it's not too concerning right now, being that it is like, almost 3.5 billion below that level, but, and can go way above that level as well. But that would be like sort of, okay, it's time to maybe be a little bit more cautious here. But ultimately, I just want to kind of highlight that as potential thing to keep an eye on later on. Of course, I do have my own alerts over here. In fact, what I'm going to do now, and you can do this as well, is I'm going to do an open interest alert for over. I want to know when it's over 13 and then also 14, but I'm just going to start with 13 right here. Obviously my under 8's probably not going to get ticked off anytime soon, or, knock on wood on that one. I mean, if it does, then you got probably bigger problems. And then I'll also do above 14 right here. So kind of like showing the shifting dynamics of this market right now, but that's, I suppose, what I'll leave off here. So I hope that this was in some way helpful. We'll be back with a live stream tomorrow. With that said, take care. I'll be doing some big bonk action on Elden Rings a little bit later because I've been having a good old time with that game alongside keeping an eye on the charts as well. It's nice just having it on, all the multiple screens that I have going here. And so if you want to join on that, we'll be on Twitch later. Obviously not really gonna be talking about charts or nothing, but hey, if you're interested, well, you're more than welcome to hang out. If not, all good as well. Okay, cool. Wish you well as always. Take care and see you hopefully soon.